Welcome, everybody, to the Competition Archery Media Podcast, where we explore all things pertaining to competition archery. I'm your host, PJ Riley, and the CAM Podcast is brought to you by O'Neill's Classic Archery. And so with us today, we have he's not wearing black and gold, but he will be wearing black and gold, Kyle Douglas, who just joined Matthews. Kyle, thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me.
So how does that, Matthews, now we know you shot PSE, you shot Bowtech. Have you ever shot from Matthews before?
I have not. No, it's the first time I've ever even really shot one. Growing up, I take that back. I had a mission as a kid. One of my first real bows as a kid was a mission. So I guess I have, but I don't really count that as shooting one competitively or whatever, you know?
Well, before we jump into what happened and, where things are going, first day, you pick up a title, first time you get it in your hands, what was your thought?
First thought that went through my head was like, this is what a bow is supposed to hold like. The thing is just awesome, the way that it holds and stuff. I was like, this is how a bow is supposed to be. Was what went through my head.
Yeah, nice. And when did you finally pick one up? How long ago was that?
I've been playing with bows. I mean, as soon as people got me bows after the whole Bowtech deal, I can't remember how long I've been shooting just the Matthews, maybe a month or so. I kind of like, this is probably the route I think I want to go. So we're just going to kind of go off with that one. The way the whole Bowtech deal ended, I couldn't really didn't work out where I was able to do anything until after the start of the year as far as contracts and stuff like that go. Yeah. But I knew what was going to happen. So at that point, I pretty much just started shooting the Matthews exclusively.
Yeah. Well, all right, then let's get into it. Bowtech, you were shooting there for 1 year. It won a bunch of stuff. So you did your part.
I like to think so. Yeah, I guess.
And I mean, we should talk about, before we get into your other titles that you won with it, I know the one that I was blown away by was ASA or at the Classic. You had to shoot basically the unheard of score on the last day to win Shooter of the Year. And you did. I forget what you shot, how many up you shot that day.
I can't remember what it was.
I think you just missed one. 112, I think.
I don't remember what it was. 34, 36 or something like that. Something crazy.
Yeah. And then what else did you win last year?
Oh, I'm trying to think. I think I won like 3 ASAs, Dakota Classic, Outdoor Target Nationals, NFA Shooter of the Year, ASA Shooter of the Year. I was trying to think of what else. There may have been some other stuff in there. I had a ton of podiums last year.
Yeah.
I can't remember exactly what all ones I won. They kind of all get mixed together at the end of the year.
Right. Yeah. That was the one I was talking about was ASA Known Pro Shooter of the Year. I mean, that's arguably probably the most competitive Shooter of the Year title that there is. It came down to the last day.
That's a tough one. Yeah, trying to win that one is really tough. So I feel pretty fortunate to be able to do it like that. It was awesome the way that worked out. Coming from behind and just shooting a monster score to win that one was pretty cool.
What happened there at the end of Bowtech? Obviously, you were probably figuring, oh yeah, I'll be shooting this for a couple of years.
Yeah, so I had a 4-year deal that started at the start of 2023. So yeah, I was kind of planning on staying with them for a while, and yeah, they end up cutting that deal short on me and said, we're done. We're not going to finish out the contract. So, I didn't really have a choice. I had to switch bows this year, but I think it's going to be for the better. I'm really happy with the new stuff. Obviously there will be a little bit of a learning curve, but so far it's shooting amazing right off the bat.
So what's that like for you? I'm guessing this happened in the fall. You're a bow hunter. You got a bow hunting, or you have your archery shop. You probably weren't necessarily thinking too much about target archery yet. What's that like then to get that call? And now you have to deal with something you probably weren't figuring on you had to deal with.
Yeah, that was tough because it was so late in the year. I can't remember what part of October. I remember it was in October. which is tough. The first thing that went through my mind was like, what am I going to do? Where am I going to go? Because most of your companies are going to have budgets tied up a lot earlier in the year than that.
Yeah.
So all their shooting budgets are pretty well gone. They're not planning for another shoot or anything. So started making some calls and just kind of seeing what I could do. And luckily, Matthews was super accommodating and was happy to have me come on board. So it worked out really good. And, I tried several different bows. And ultimately with the way contract stuff worked out, obviously there's that factor plays into it, but there was several of them that were, fairly close together within reason anyways. And at that point I was like, you know what, I'm just going to throw everything else out the window and let the bow decide what I shoot next year. I'm just going to shoot all the bows side by side that I'm thinking about, and whatever one I like the best is what I'm going to shoot. And I just kept going back to that Matthews every time. I was just more forgiving and just held better. So that's kind of where I ended up. But yeah, it was a terrible timing for that to all happen.
I've heard Rob Caulfield here talk about, people say, the shooters, they just go for the money. And he's like, you can go for the money and have something that you don't think you can win with. And he's always like, the pro shooters, they're going to go for what they can win with.
Yeah, I mean, my job is to go out there and win tournaments. And if I'm not doing that, doesn't matter how much I'm getting paid the first year, because after that, it's not going to get renewed if I'm not making the wins, So I rely on having to win tournaments to keep my career going. So I'm not going to shoot something I don't think I'm going to win with. That's for dang sure.
Yeah. And how important is that to you? You have the shop, it's called Douglas Archery, I believe.
Yeah.
And in Ogden, Utah. Mm-hmm. So you have that business as well, but how important is it to you to have the shooter contract? Bo's obviously the biggest one. That's going to be the biggest sponsor. How important is that to you just in, going about everyday life and paying bills?
Yeah. So to me, I consider shooting as my main job. The shop was kind of a side gig when it started out, and now it's grown enough that it's kind of turned into a full-time when I'm home type of thing. If I'm traveling to tournaments, I've got guys here running it and stuff, but when I'm home, I'm there every day. So I rely mostly on shooting, and then most of the stuff that I make through the shop just goes back into it in inventory and stuff to kind of try and grow it and just keep it going. And then eventually one day, it may turn into a good income source, but right now we're still so small. We're just kind of growing as we go, and it's working good. We've grown a lot in the last probably 3 years or so since we moved to the new building. It's been going really well over there.
Right. And that's predominantly bow hunting, I think you've said before?
Yeah, mostly all bow hunting. I do a bunch of, just because I'm a target shooter, guys kind of come in to me for, somebody that has experience with the target stuff. And I do stock quite a bit of the target stuff for the size of the shop.
Right.
But like target bows and stuff like that, I'm usually just special order in when somebody needs them. But all the, stabilizers, sights, scopes, arrows, that kind of stuff, I keep all that kind of target stuff there for sure.
Yeah. So the Matthews title, so as you said, you went through all the bows, kept coming back to that one. Was it the aiming that was primarily what you liked about it?
Yeah, so the big thing I noticed with that bow was it aimed really well and it was super forgiving. I felt like I could get away with murder with that bow and they would still go in the X. So that's what I'm looking for. That's what you need to win tournaments. When it's all on the line, you got to shoot that last arrow to win the tournament. You need a bow that's going to help you, not fight against you. That's for sure.
Yeah, I remember a post one time somebody said, what for you is the perfect shot? And all these people were talking about, when the pin's sitting in the middle and I break and everything feels perfect, it goes in the X. And I remember I posted in there, when my pin is nowhere near the middle, when my shot feels horrible and the arrow goes in the X, that's the perfect shot for me.
Exactly. I don't care how I get him there, as long as I get him there.
It's easy when everything goes right. It's easy for him to get him in the X. It's when things go wrong.
Yep, I'm all about that. Especially now that I switched to punching it. Good feeling shots go out the window. I care where they hit, and that's all I care about.
Yeah, so we talked to Tim Gillingham the other day about the punching, and of course, he's convinced that that is the way to go now, and you've certainly made your career on the punching there. But describe for people what it is that you're doing. So I've seen your release and how hairy that thing is. How do you get that thing? Is it all just the weight that you do? Actually, let's back up and start out. So this title, tell us about how you have that set up in terms of mods, stabilizer weights, and all that.
So everything's just kind of the same as what I normally run. The lowest let off mods I can get typically. Right now it's set at 60 pounds just for indoors, for the USA Archery and World Archery stuff.
Yeah.
Typically outdoors I run 70s. Stabilizers are pretty much the same as I was running before. I'd have to count weights, but I should be somewhere right around like 25, 26 up front, probably about 28 out back. 30-inch front bar, 15-inch back bar, but I mount them both on the front hole on the riser.
Okay.
And then
do you have that special 8-ounce weight that is unique to the title, the one that's just on the riser?
I took that one off. I actually like the feeling of it off better on that bow.
Okay, gotcha. And then, so lowest let off, I believe, is 70% on those mods. Yeah, so that's what you're running. Okay. So then run through. So you're just looking for that pin to sit right where you want it to hit. That's your thing. Yeah,
and I've never been somebody that, I hold decent. I don't hold as good as some of the other guys do, for sure. And that's partially why I'm a command shooter. But I'm looking for something that just has a really slow pin float that I can just get to settle in the middle. You don't want those bows that just have those herky-jerky, real quick movements in and out of the center. And it just, mentally it's tough to shoot those bows when they feel like you can't keep them stable in the middle. And this bow just has a really soft aim to it. Everything just kind of wants to move slow and not quite as, herky-jerky or stuff like that.
Right. Yeah, so that's where we were talking with Tim. He was like, the surprise shot, where the pin's floating all around. How do you know where it's going to go off? It can go off in the wrong place. And I think I've heard you talk about one of the reasons you went to command was the dip bangs. You just got tired of getting bit by them.
Yeah, so there was one year, or the year that I switched, I think there was 2 or 3 local tournaments or kind of regional tournaments here around home within a few hours. And I think I missed an arrow at least 2 different tournaments, maybe 3 different tournaments at home that year. And I was just so fed up. I was like, this is ridiculous. Why am I missing these points? And I was like, if I could just shoot the bow while the pin's in the middle, I'd never miss. And I was like, wait, I can. Obviously, I figured out a way to miss with that too, but it's way easier for me to hit them when I can just shoot it while it's in the middle instead of waiting for it to wiggle out of the middle and go off. So a totally different shot style.
That's something. Yeah, it's the mental part is, I guess, getting people to figure out how to do that without anticipating or that kind of.
Oh yeah, for most people, it's just a catastrophic failure when they try and start punching the trigger, but for whatever reason, it works for me. And you do have to be very diligent on the mental side of things and just making sure that you don't get that anticipation getting you and stuff like that. And, to me, target panic is a big problem. If you expect to get target panic, you're going to get it. I don't care who you are, what you're doing, you're going to get it if you expect to get it. But if you just don't consider that as a possibility, it's way easier to just shoot your bow and not worry about all the anticipation and stuff like that. And then if you do start to get something, just nip it in the butt before it becomes a problem.
Now, were you surprised that Matthews had room for Kyle Douglas that late in the year?
Yeah, a little bit. I know they're, one of the biggest companies, if not the biggest company right now. So I knew if I had a chance anywhere, that was one of the better ones. And they've historically been, super supportive of pro shooters and really believe in that, sales model. But it was really good. And it sounds like, I don't know all the details of what happened kind of behind the scenes there, but it definitely sounds like they made room for me more than had room. It sounds like they shuffled things around and did what they had to make a spot for me, which was really awesome, that somebody valued me that much.
Well, for the outside world, I mean, how many Vegas championships?
2 as a pro.
2 Vegas, 2 NFA Indoor National Championships.
Had 3 of those.
3 of those
in a row. Yeah.
Back-to-back ASA Shooter of the Year, known pro. There's a couple titles out there that are, pretty impressive in the target world.
Yeah.
So with all those that you have, which do you value the most? And I don't mean just, this tournament over that tournament, but individually, which title means the most to you, Kyle Douglas?
I think my favorite was the first time I won Vegas.
Okay.
It was just the craziest thing ever. That was actually the first big pro tournament that I won. I'd won some small little stuff around home, like the Big Sky Open and stuff like that, but I don't consider that on the same level as like a regular pro tournament.
Right.
So yeah, winning Vegas was it was awesome. It changed the whole course of my life and everything. I was just graduating. We're getting ready to graduate college that semester and planning on being an engineer and stuff. And then, won Vegas and so many doors open for me. I was like, you know what? I'm going to ride the archery thing out as far as I can ride it out and see where that goes. And so far I'm still on that train. It's been working out awesome for me.
So do you have the engineering degree?
I do. Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. I finished up school. I've never used it yet.
Yeah.
Obviously it just kind of comes in handy, the knowledge that you get from that. But, have never worked as an engineer yet. I just been shooting and working at the shop since I graduated.
That's a good degree to have in your back pocket for if something were to happen.
Yeah. But that win is the most significant to me by far. It was pretty awesome.
Yeah. Is that now the degree that you got in engineering, is that one that you would use potentially to develop archery products, or is it a whole different field?
No, it's just a mechanical engineering degree. So yeah, okay. Exactly what you would want if you were designing stuff for archery.
Is that something that interests you that maybe you might get into someday?
Yeah. I definitely have thought about, coming out with some different things. I've always got ideas rolling in my head. What if somebody could build this or whatever, it would be a lot better. And yeah, so who knows, maybe potentially you could see me building something or going to work for somebody someday. Making
the world's hairiest hair trigger on that thumb button release.
That would be awesome.
Yeah, that I've seen you shake your release before and it fires there. That would scare the heck out of me.
I set them as light as they're trustworthy. That's how I do it.
That's insane. But it works. I mean, obviously it works. I mean, Jimmy Lutz, same thing. Yeah. So going forward then, do you has Matthew said hey, you could have a future here if you want it? Yeah. So, when I was kind of talking to them, they're looking more long-term. And when we're working out contracts and stuff, we're not looking, I think both of us were kind of on the same page, so Derek is who runs their pro staff. And then both of us seem kind of on the same page. We're we're not looking for just a short-term little get you through type of deal. We want to create something that could be a career option going forward and, try and have a long-term home there. So I think that's definitely a good possibility. You never know how things are going to work out or what the company's going to do or what I'm going to do. But I do think that could potentially be a long-term home for me, which is kind of what I'm planning on. I'm not somebody that likes to switch around a lot. So I just kind of like to find a bow I like and stick with it. And I'm a pretty loyal person. So, if somebody treats me right, I'm typically going to stay around for a long time. And then, so I'll ask you the question. You can answer if you want. So I'm guessing that probably the way the Bowtech thing went down, you probably thinking you had a long-term, that probably left kind of a bad taste in your mouth.
Yeah, that was not the greatest departure from Bowtech for sure. Yeah. Not the way I seen things going, but you just kind of roll with the punches and do what you got to do. So I've seen lots of comments online, about switching bow companies like that. But for a guy at your level, so we're talking 3 years, PSE, Bowtech, Matthews. Is that a big deal that,
you're switching to 3 totally different bows in 3 years, or is it not that big a deal?
Yes and no. It's obviously not something that I would like to do. I never even wanted to leave PSE in the very first place. Just didn't work out for me to stay there. So going to Bowtech, I kind of took a chance, and it took me a while. The start of the year, I shot the bow good to start with, but not quite the level I wanted to. And it took me about half the year or so to really get that bow figured out and shooting well. And then once I did, it shot awesome.
Right.
The Matthews, I'm starting off the year, obviously we haven't shot any tournaments yet this year. But so far it is starting off way better than what I did with the Bowtech. Not that I didn't shoot the Bowtech good right off the bat.
Right.
But this bow has been just on a whole different level so far. So hopefully the transition's a lot smoother and easier. Practice scores right now are awesome. Shooting really, really good at home. So we'll see what happens under pressure. And to me, the hardest part about switching is learning what the bows do under pressure. Every bow is going to react different under pressure. And I need to learn how it's going to react and what I've got to do either to the bow or to my shot to kind of perform well under that pressure. But you never know until you get there. So you got to put yourself in the tournament, on that last arrow to win the tournament to really get that feel. And then, if you don't have the bow dialed and you lose the tournament, well, then it's back to the drawing board and you got to do that all over again and burn a tournament to try and figure out the bow. But,
right.
I learned a lot last year. I'd shot PSE my whole pro career. So I knew every in and out of the bows, what they liked, what they didn't like, how to shoot them, how to set them up. So switching to Bowtech, everything was new and I had to learn. Yeah. I guess I learned a lot of stuff about myself and my shot style and what I actually needed out of the bow to do what I needed to do. So taking that into Matthews, I think hopefully it'll be a lot shorter transition because I've got it pretty well nailed down. I think anyways, as far as what I need in a setup to make it do what I need it to do. So, obviously Rushmore Rumble's coming up. That's going to be kind of the test runs. We'll see how I did set it up in practice.
Yeah. Have you been shooting any local stuff or will that be your first tournament? Rushmore?
That'll be the very first tournament with that bow.
Okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Yeah. So then after that, Lancaster Classic, $50,000 on the line for a 660. Do you have a 660 in you?
I sure hope so. In practice, I've got them in me. We'll see what happens when I get to the tournament for sure. But I'm feeling fairly confident with the new bow so far. I mean, obviously, like I said, we'll see what happens under pressure. But so far, pretty confident with it. So we'll see what we can pull out there.
Well, in your practice session, so do you shoot like 300 rounds or do you go and shoot 600 rounds? How do you break up what you do?
It depends on what tournament I'm getting ready for. So like for Rushmore, we're shooting the 5-spot Vegas face. So I've been shooting that and shooting 600 rounds on there. If I'm getting ready for like Lancaster or Vegas, typically I'll just shoot a, regular 300 round and I'll shoot however many in a day, depending on what time it is or, what time I've got or if I'm working on stuff or if my bow's shooting really, really good and I'm just trying to maintain, I'm happy with everything. I'm just trying to maintain. I'm not going to shoot quite as much. I just kind of keep everything the way it is. If I'm working on things or I'm struggling with something and trying to fix things, I may be there all day long shooting. So it just kind of depends on how things are working and that kind of stuff. And, typically the time I get to shoot is either before the shop's open or after it's closed. So most of the time I'm just shooting by myself on the range and I can cruise through a Vegas round in a hurry. I mean, it probably takes me 20 minutes or so to shoot a 300 round when I'm just shooting by myself. So I can get a lot of arrows in a hurry. Yeah.
20 minutes, man.
Yeah, maybe 25, something like that. I can get one out pretty quick.
So for you, when you shoot a Vegas round, I'm guessing 300 is probably you want that 300, but what's your normal X count? Are 30X games pretty common for you?
It depends on how I'm shooting at the time. If I'm shooting well, I'm expecting a 30X.
Okay.
If I'm struggling with stuff, maybe not, but I'm never happy unless I shoot a 30X round. Like if I shoot a 28, 29 in practice, I'm definitely not happy with that.
Gotcha.
And there's times I shoot a 30X round and I'm not happy with the way that I shot it. But then maybe if I've been struggling a little bit or something like that, and I've been shooting a bunch of 28s or a few 27s or whatever, and and I shoot a 29 or something, maybe I'm kind of excited with that, but definitely not satisfied unless it's a 30X round. That's for sure.
That's one of the things that I've noticed where you can make a perfect shot. You're behind the bow, so you know what you want it to feel like. And yet you can still have a perfect shot and be like, man, I got away with one there. That was not a good shot. It landed good, but that was not a good shot.
Yeah. People think I'm crazy, but there's actually been times that I'll shoot a 30X round in practice and go tear my whole bow apart and just start changing stuff and trying to make it better. And, it really frustrates my dad when I do that. He's like, what do you do? You shot a 30X. I was like, yeah, but it wasn't a good, it didn't feel like it needed to feel. And I know it's not going to hold up under pressure. So I'll go screw with stuff and whatever, even if I am shooting good scores in practice, just because I know, practice isn't the same as tournament pressure. And I got to set up for tournament pressure, not just for good practice scores.
Is there a typical issue? Like if you're like, something doesn't feel right, is there something that's usually more problematic than something else?
The biggest thing for me, especially on new bows, is draw length and just really, really fine tuning in draw length. Loop length, peep height, draw length are probably the most critical things for me when I'm setting up a bow.
Gotcha.
I guess holding weight is kind of thrown in that category too. And then, tune is important. I can shoot especially indoors, I can shoot a bow that's way out of tune and still shoot it well. But when I get a bow tuned like I like it, it definitely helps things for sure. And it just adds all that extra forgiveness that you need. So, that's not something that I start out with quite as much. I'll get it close, go shoot it, really dial in all my measurements on there. And then once I get those perfected, then I'll kind of work on the tune last is kind of like the final step in the process. So,
yeah. So what's your expectations? Like we said, you weren't expecting to go into this year shooting a new bow, but now that you are, does that change your expectations or goals or not? Is everything still what you were thinking anyway?
Still kind of the same as normal. This bow has been shooting good enough in practice lately that I definitely have, this, it could potentially be a really good season. Who knows? Maybe as soon as I get under that first tournament pressure, I'll crash and burn and have to go back to the drawing board. So you never know, but I do feel like this bow has the potential to have a really good season as long as I do my job well. So I'm definitely have high expectations this year. And
what is on tap? What are you planning to shoot this year?
We got a bunch of stuff lined up. I think January is going to be Rushmore Rumble. We go to Iowa Pro-Am. We go over to Nîmes.
You are
Lancaster
going to Nîmes.
Classic.
Okay.
Yep, going to Nîmes. So last year was the first time I've been there, and I'll keep going back to that one.
Okay.
So we go from Nîmes straight to Lancaster, then we go to Vegas, and then we'll start up on the ASAs, I think, end of February. And then I usually shoot all the NFA stuff and all the ASA stuff. And then sometimes a few odds and ends thrown in here and there, depending on, what schedules look like and stuff like that.
The USATs, do you try to get to some of those? How do you work USATs?
Yeah, in the past, I've kind of shot a couple of those hit and miss. Never really shot that tour or anything. And that may be on the books a little bit this year. I'm not sure. I haven't really looked at any schedules, anything like that, or really talked to Matthews about it to kind of see, what they would prefer me to shoot if they want me to spend time on that or just kind of focus on the ASA stuff or whatever.
Right.
So we'll see what happens this year. I'm not quite sure on those yet.
Yeah. You said NFA Outdoor Nationals. I was thinking when you said Outdoor Nationals, I was thinking USAT Outdoor Nationals.
Oh, yeah.
But it was NFA. Right. Gotcha.
Mm-hmm.
And Reading, of course, you shoot Reading.
Yeah.
That's one that you do. Yeah. So for you, do you have a preference, 3D or spots?
I have more fun shooting 3D. I just like that style of archery, but if there's money there to win, I'm going. I'm not really picky. I just love to compete and I love to, try and win tournaments. So I'll shoot indoors, I'll shoot outdoors, I'll shoot 3D. It doesn't really matter too much to me.
Yeah. Are you surprised? Going by some of the ASA shooters, some of the pros that are in there now, grew up shooting that game. Are you surprised how well you were able to get to the top, especially in known pro? I mean, I know it's not the same as judging distance, but still you got to know where to aim when there's nothing to aim at, and it's the most competitive class. Did you think that was going to take you a while to get there?
Yeah, I mean, I expected it to take quite a while, and it did take me a little while, but the first ASA I ever went to, I'd shot 3D all growing up at home, but our 3Ds are totally different.
Yeah.
We're using all Reinhardt targets, and it's more of like a marked yardage IBO shoot type of thing. Where like it's a trail shoot, you walk the course and shoot the targets, are all Reinhardt stuff. So I had experience with that, but not on any of the ASA targets and not at that level. So the first one I went to, I was like, I felt fairly confident. I knew how to shoot 3D, and I went there and I was like, holy cow, I know nothing about 3D like these guys know about 3D. It was a whole different level. So I went back home, revamped really quickly. And I traveled with Gillingham to the first one I went with to, which is who I travel with to pretty much everything. But he definitely kind of gave me a good jump start after that first tournament. Like, hey, you got to get you this and this and this. Like, this is how you do this and that. And, leaped me forward a bunch there. But yeah, it's definitely taken some work to get there for sure.
Yeah. I thought, we knew, hey, Kyle Douglas is going to shoot ASA. We figured you'd get there, but I was surprised that you were able to pick it up so quickly. I thought it would take a while because, I mean, people say, oh, if you could shoot a bow, it's that ring is to know exactly where to put it. And especially if there's a bunch of arrows in there, how to navigate that scenario. It's not as simple, I think. I don't think anybody thinks it's easy, but simple, it's not that from what I've seen.
No, the biggest thing, for me different, well, there's a lot of things different from 3D to target, but the biggest thing is you're not just staring at the middle of the yellow and watching your arrow go there. You're having to pick a spot to shoot and then execute a shot on that spot. But there's so many other factors that come into play with 3D, like, do I shoot upper or lower? How many arrows are in the target? Where are they in the target? Am I going to glance out if I hit close to that arrow? So do I try and shoot the other one because of that? There's all kinds of factors that come into play there. And I feel like I've always been fairly good at that game, just growing up kind of shooting that around here.
Yeah.
But like I said, an ASA is on a totally different level than what we've got around here for sure.
Right. And for you was 3D shooting just a byproduct of, hey, I'm a bow hunter and this is as close to bow hunting as you can get?
Kind of, yeah. So when I first started out, I guess when I first started archery, started as a little kid just shooting bows in the backyard with my dad and whatever. And then my dad started taking me to a kids league. We'd shoot a kids league on Wednesday nights, and me and one of my buddies would go shoot that every Wednesday night, and we just loved it. They would have pin balloons up on the target, and if you pop the balloon, you get a piece of candy and just stuff to kind of get us hooked. And then we got addicted to it, and we started going to that more and more. And then they progress you, like as you get a little older, you move from the 10-yard line to the 20-yard line, and then they taught us how to score and stuff like that, and then kind of got us into the tournaments and stuff from there. But so at first, basically, I just shot mostly all indoor stuff in the wintertime. And then come spring, everything around here would turn to 3D. So I just kind of naturally went to the 3D stuff and picked that up and really loved the 3D as a kid, especially. We just loved shooting the 3D animals and had a blast with it. We didn't really care what we scored or anything. We just liked shooting it because we were shooting the animals for, I'm a diehard bow hunter. I've always loved hunting since the day I can remember. So yeah, the 3D was just kind of a natural transition from that for sure.
And now, do you obviously, shooting, the more you shoot your bow, the better you get at shooting at it. But is there anything particular to 3D that you, especially elevating to the level of 3D that you're at, that you see in bow hunting that you're like, man, whatever I did at ASA, that really just helped me do that? Do you see that correlation? Different bows, but.
Yeah, kind of, sort of. I would say there's a lot of animals that I've killed that definitely would not have happened if I couldn't shoot at the level that I do. Whether that's knowing how to cut yardage or how to play the wind and where to aim off in the wind, or just how to make good shots and technical shots and stuff like that. And also just kind of the muscle memory factor too. When things happen so fast, you don't even think. Next thing you know, you're drawn back and you just shoot, and the animal runs off. And it's like, what just happened? And luckily I shoot enough that even if I don't think about it, typically form is all going to be the same in that, just because it goes to the same spot every time. As long as I execute a good shot, usually it works out okay. But yeah, there's a lot of animals that would still be out there walking around if I couldn't shoot on a fairly high level.
I like that. I hadn't thought, the muscle memory I had thought of, but I hadn't thought about the technical stuff, the holding off in the wind. Obviously, you learn that real quick in the target game. So I'm thinking of these bow hunters out there who are like, I don't need to shoot 3D or whatever, but hey, you can learn some things
so much. When it's just second nature to shoot your bow, it's a totally different ball game than somebody that's going to think through every step in the shot process rather than just doing it. And there's been some really, really difficult shots I've made on animals that I definitely couldn't have done if I couldn't shoot well.
Right. All right. So I'm going to ask the question. People sometimes don't like it, but what's the farthest you've ever killed one at with a bow?
I'm not going to tell you that one. It's too far.
Too far. Gotcha. And there's Kyle Douglas far is one thing, and PJ Riley far is a totally different thing there.
Yeah, we're deep into the triple digits on that one, so I'm not going to.
Gotcha. So preference, you can only hunt one animal the rest of your life. What's it going to be?
Elk for sure. Hands down.
Gotcha. Yeah. Typically, where do you get to? Do you have a typical circuit that you do for elk each year? Can you get it as a local or as a resident? Can you get a Utah elk tag every year?
Yeah, I can buy a tag over the counter here every year. Our over the counter tags are not very good tags.
Gotcha.
We've got some really good draw units here in Utah. The general stuff is super tough. Just not a lot of elk and not tons of places to go. But I do have a few spots that have been pretty productive where we can go and find elk pretty consistently.
Yeah.
So it's good. I spend a lot of time out of state if I can get tags. I've hunted, trying to think where I've hunted for elk. Never had a Nevada tag, but Idaho, Montana, Wyoming are the main ones that I typically try and hunt. And I try and have at least one out of state elk tag every year if I can.
Gotcha.
Doesn't always work out like that, but yeah, so I usually we open early here, like the third week of August. Usually I'll either hunt deer elk the first week here, and then as soon as September rolls around, I'll usually try and be out of state hunting somewhere. And then we're lucky enough here in Utah that they call it an extended season. So there's a few different units that we can hunt. For elk, the extended runs from the end of the regular season all the way through December 15th. So I do get pretty fortunate to be able to chase elk on that. But I would say that's probably one of the toughest units to kill an elk on in the U.S., if not the toughest elk unit in the U.S. to kill an elk on, because every single person in the state of Utah with an unfilled elk tag can hunt that unit for 4 months out of the year. It's pretty tough, and there's not very many elk on there.
Yeah.
So it's really difficult.
And is that go through the usual cycle of weapons for seasons? Like they're chasing with guns, muzzleloaders, rifles, bows.
Depends. So part of the unit, yes, part of the unit is archery only, which is nice. But there are definitely other parts of it where, it gets hunted all year. You got archery hunt, and then they actually made 2 rifle hunts now. So they have like an early rifle, a late rifle, and then they have a muzzleloader hunt that's a late season muzzleloader hunt. And then they still get hammered on the archery hunt until December 15th on parts of the unit. So it's pretty crazy.
Tough. Yeah.
Yeah.
How far do you generally have to go from your house to get in to hunt elk, let's say? I'm guessing deer's probably different, but.
Yeah, so it just depends on where I'm going. Like, so on the extended archery, the one along the Wasatch Front, typically to get into elk, it's, I would say, anywhere from like an hour to 2 hours, depending on what part of the unit I'm hunting, just to get to the trailhead, and then you've got to go in from there. But there's other, places we hunt like during the regular season. There's some places I can hunt here fairly close to home that are not. There's not a lot of elk in there, but I've got a couple pockets every now and then I'll find some bulls in. And then there's a few other units that will hunt that could be, 3-4 hours away sometimes, depending. And then, obviously all the out of state stuff's a ways farther than that.
Yeah. Close by.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I've Pennsylvania, so I'm used to, 5 minutes away. Boy, that's a long drive. But then the first time I went out west, I think it was Nebraska, someplace in the middle of Nebraska, and I was like, man, where do you guys go to hunt around here? They're like, oh, not too far. It's only like 2 hours. I thought, 2 hours? Holy cow.
Yeah.
So it's all perspective on what's far and what isn't far.
Yeah, like an hour or so for me. That's just normal. That's nothing.
That's typical. Yeah.
When I was hunting my deer here at home this year, I think I was driving. I can't remember how long it was taking me. About an hour and a half or so in the morning, before it got light, and then hiking for a couple hours in the dark just to get up into my spot, by the time it hit daylight.
Yeah. Now out there, I mean, you're just doing spot and stalk. You're not messing with tree stands or anything like that.
Oh, no. I've only hunted in a tree stand a couple times ever. And all that was, I call it back east. To you guys, it's probably out west, but to me, anything east of Colorado is back east.
And you probably found that boring as hell, didn't you? Sitting in a tree stand.
Yeah, it's not my style for sure. I have a struggle with that one. It's just like, I see one that's like 200 yards away across the field, and I'm like, let's go get it. I want to go over there and get it. And it's like,
not how it works. Sitting here in the tree. Yeah. I always thought about that for the Western guys. I find tree stand hunting boring at times, but I thought, man, if you're used to spot and stalk, this has to be boring.
Yeah, it's just totally different. It's exciting when something comes by. Also, like, boom, it's right there in bow range, and it's cool. But yeah, sitting there and not seeing much all day, it's a challenge for me for sure.
Gotcha. All right. Well, Kyle, was there anything that we did not talk about pertaining to anything archery? I don't care, anything at all that you wanted to talk about that we didn't hit?
Not really that I can think of.
Got it all. All right. Well, then let's wrap it up here, folks. That's another episode of the Competition Archery Media Podcast. You can find it on all the platforms, wherever you find your favorite podcast. Kyle Douglas, congratulations on the change to Matthews there, and we certainly wish you the best of luck this season. And thanks for taking time to be with us today.
Thanks, PJ. I appreciate it.
All right, folks, don't forget you can find Competition Archery Media Podcast wherever you find all your favorite podcasts. Thanks for being here today.